Hello everyone, here I am with another tutorial, and in this tutorial we're going to be making a setting out of just basic textures. And I decided to do this because I had an idea for a piece and I thought, wait a minute, that would make a really good tutorial, so why not go ahead and make one. So we're going to use two different textures to create a back wall and a floor. And one thing that I've noticed with a lot of people who create these kind of room settings is they end up looking kind of fake. So they simulate shadows to create like a depth or a realism to the room, when in reality you're better off just trying to use the natural texture itself to create the realism. So that's what we're going to do with these two textures. And the one you're looking at right now is just a regular dirty concrete wall. And the floor we're going to be using is kind of like a sidewalk brick and mortar kind of thing going on here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new document that we can work in nice and fresh. So we'll go to File, New, and the native original resolution of the two images we're using is 72. Typically I work in 300 dpi because I create my images for print, so I always work in 300 dpi as a starting point, but we're going to keep it at 72 because that's where these textures are coming from, and really this is just for the tutorial. You're welcome to start in whatever resolution you want. So we'll keep it at 72. Let's make it, I don't know, 10 by 15 by 10. That looks good. So we'll take the first texture, the concrete wall, and we're going to click on it and drag it over. And as you can see, it's a lot bigger than we need, but that's fine. That works out great. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. We're going to press Command T or go to, let me turn that off. We're going to go to Edit, Transform, Scale, or whichever one you want. You can use scale if you want at the moment. We're going to hold down Shift so that we keep our proportions even as we scale it down. So we're going to scale it down. Just move it on over. And for this particular case, since the image is so big, I think we might have to change the proportions of our canvas. So I'm going to just stretch it out all the way to the end. As you can see, yeah, we need a little more space for our floor. So I'm just going to double click it so we can get rid of the bounding box with the transform. And I'm going to go to Image, Canvas Size, and I'm going to make the height something like maybe 14. That's a little bit better. And as you can see, because I had my color set to black, it gave me a black background. We can just delete that last layer and we're totally fine now. We're going to click on the wall, hold down Shift, so that way it stays. As you can see, when you hold down Shift, it keeps it in place. If I don't hold down Shift, it just goes all over the place. When I hold down Shift, it allows me to keep it in one place. So we'll drag it up, and now we've got some room for our floor. We're going to go over to the floor image, and we're going to drag it over and drop it in. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to hit Command or Control T, or you can go to Edit, Transform, Scale, hold down Shift, and then just take one of the corners and drag it over. Just kind of scale it down. Now for this particular purpose, I'm going to scale it out so that it's the same size. Since it's going to be a floor, we don't really need it to be, you know, super big. We need it to be scrunched down, because when you look at a floor at an angle, it's going to be much smaller than if you were to look down at a brick and mortar floor from the ground down. You would be looking at it at an angle if you're looking at a setting like this. So we're going to take the middle bounding box and we're going to just scrunch it down right about there. Now typically, I've seen with tutorials like this, they'll tell you to put the wall behind the floor. We're not going to do that this time. We're going to put the wall in front of the floor. So we're going to first finish creating the floor, and then we're going to drop the layer behind. So we're going to go to Edit, Transform, Perspective. And we're just going to hold down one of the corners and hold down Shift so that our perspective remains consistent on both sides. And we're just going to drag it out. That looks like a pretty good angle right there. So we're going to double click inside the bounding box and let it go. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to put the floor behind the wall. So we're going to take the layer 2 that we just created with the floor, and we're going to drop it behind. Now, the reason why I use this particular texture, let's zoom in so we can see, is that we've already got a bit of a wall ending going on here. So that's what we're going to use that to our advantage to create a more realistic wall. So we're going to click on layer 1 with our wall, and we're going to go down to the bottom of the layers menu. We're going to click add a layer mask. Now we're going to go to our paintbrush, and we're going to make sure that we have a brush that's appropriate for the image that we're using. So we're going to make it maybe about 20 pixels and make sure that it's got a sharp edge, because what you're doing is you're going to now erase out, technically you're erasing out, what you're doing is you're painting, and the painting is erasing out in the mask. So we're just going to erase out this floor portion here. Don't worry about what's showing up there. We can fix that in a second. Right now what you're worried about is kind of following the line at the bottom of the wall that's already been created naturally from the wall itself. You know, it's a good thing this particular photographer was savvy enough to photograph the wall so that we could see that union between the wall and the floor, so that we can use that for our own projects. So I'm going to go along and follow this line right here. That looks like a good enough line right there. Kind of go along here, and as you can see, it gets a little confusing here, but I think I'm just going to go right here and use that. Go along this line and right about there. Now, as you can see, and I kind of did this on purpose so you can see it, we didn't extend our floor far enough, but that's fine. We can just go to our layer 2, go to edit, transform scale, and we're just going to pull it up so that it's behind the wall. Now, as you can see, that already helps to create a realistic scene, in that the wall was kind of built over the sidewalk, as opposed to just two images kind of with a flat edge meeting up, you know, in the middle of your canvas. However, what we do need is a little bit of dimension, and we're going to do that now by adding some shadows. So I'm going to go to our layer menu, and we're going to make a new layer. We're going to call this shadow. So that's simple enough. We're going to go to our paintbrush tool, and this time we're going to make the hardness 0. We're going to keep the brush size small, and let's zoom in so we can see what we're doing. And you don't want to make this shadow way too prominent or obvious. You're going to make this very subtle, because all you're doing is just creating the illusion that this wall has always been here. So you can just kind of tap your brush button. It doesn't have to be 100% or 0%, 20% or something like that. You can leave it at 100%. Just be careful when you brush in that you just kind of follow the line of the wall. Even if you go past like this a little bit, you can just go to your eraser tool. Make sure the hardness is 0, make sure the brush size is small, and just kind of push it back a little bit. You're just creating the illusion that it's always been here by adding a bit of shadow that would naturally be cast regardless of what time of day it is. Kind of fill that in a little bit there. Let's go over here. I think that looks good. Let's zoom out so you can see what we've got. And I think that looks pretty good, but it still looks like just two textures together. Now what we need to do is kind of create a bit of atmosphere. And we're going to do that by adding just a slight vignette and adjusting the colors so that the two textures match together a little bit better. Now typically the way that I create vignettes is I create the vignette myself, because I like having absolute control of how the vignette looks. So we're going to go to our layers menu and click on solid color. We're going to make just a black vignette. So it's going to be a solid black. Bear with me, just hold on. And we're going to take our elliptical marquee tool, and we're going to make a circle. Try to place it somewhat in the center here. It doesn't need to be completely even on both sides, because we'll monkey with this a little bit in just a second. Go to Select, Modify, Feather, and we're going to put it at 500 pixels. Oops, it wouldn't let me. Let's try again. Modify, Feather, let's try 250. Sometimes that happens. There we go. So what we're going to do next is we're going to get our paint bucket and we're going to drop in the color black. As you can see, that definitely helps to take it out of the realm of just two textures butted together in Photoshop and kind of creates a bit of a scene. Now, if you want to adjust how the vignette looks, you can just click on the layer itself, go to Image, Adjustments, maybe even Levels or Curves, whichever you prefer, and you can drag the little carrots back and forth and kind of adjust how the vignette looks. So if you want more, if you want less, if you want it to be brighter. I like that. I think that looks good. So we're going to keep that. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the colors. And I'm just going to create an adjustment layer that affects everything beneath what we just created. So we're going to go down to the same button, create new filler adjustment layer. And we're going to go to, I think maybe just color balance. And I wonder if maybe we can just adjust the floor, because I kind of like the way the wall looks. So let's just take that layer and drop it right above the floor itself instead. Now the floor has this kind of greenish tone to it that honestly I'm not a big fan of. So let's see if we can get rid of it a little bit. So let's adjust the mid-tones, maybe give it a bit more red, a bit more magenta. That looks a little bit better. I like that a lot more. Kind of give it like a red brick look to it. Yeah, see, and we can see the difference now when we turn off the color balance layer. That greenish tone is now gone, and you get more of the reddish tint from the wall up above. Now this scene is now ready for you to drop in anything you want. A model, a dog, cat, whatever you want. But I like this method because you actually get a real setting. It's not just two textures with like a flat line and some shadow underneath that I've seen a lot of people do. I like using this method and using textures that already have that bit of a like a wall edge, because you can use that to your advantage, like I said before. So I hope this tutorial was helpful. If you've got any questions, feel free to add them in the comments, and I hope you will tune in for my future videos. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!